In the next 40 minutes, you're going to see a live behind the scenes exclusive training call that I hosted with some of my members inside the Remote Sales Academy Mastermind. Now, this call was a role play training call with one of my clients, Michael, who's hit 10K a month in commissions, role playing his objections. And a bunch of my clients at the back end of that feedback had lots of questions essentially focused around objections. So if you're wanting to get better objections and you want to learn how to objection handle correctly, efficiently, better, so you can make more commissions in the high ticket sales space, or you're looking to get into the industry and you just want to do things right from the jump, this training is going to be super useful for you. Now, if you don't know my background, my credibility, my experience, I've made over 25K a month in commissions directly in this industry. I've helped 67 plus people get to 10 to 50K a month plus in commissions in the high ticket sales space. And I've been in this space for 6 years and I've taken thousands of sales calls. So I know a thing or two about what I'm speaking and talking about. So yeah, I think you'll find this training insanely useful. The last time I posted one of these would have been about 6 months ago. So very rarely do I do this, but I thought you guys would get massive value from me sharing this to the YouTube channel. So if you did get the value, like, comment, let me know so I can post more sales trainings like this if this is something you want to see more of on this YouTube channel. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Okay, cool. Well, let's get straight into things. Obviously this call is roleplay training, as you're all aware. So we'll dive straight into roleplay. But before we do that, does anybody have any wins to share?
I've got the second paycheck from the B2B offer that I'm on, which is another 10K. So it seems like this was a consistent comp, which is good.
It's a great win. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Great way to start the call. So any questions as well, supporting any questions you guys want to get out of the way before we start diving into training today? No. Cool. All right. Michael, what do you want to roleplay?
Could I do objection handling for Bizop?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And who else would like to roleplay today? Anybody? Willing to volunteer? Matt? All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Matt will be a prospect. What are you selling?
It's ecom Bizop offer.
Okay. All right, let's do it.
All right, Matt. So the investment comes down to 5K. How would you like to proceed from here?
I don't know. I think I might need some time to think about it.
Okay. I mean, like, do you think this is what you were looking for?
Yeah, I think it ticks some of the boxes. I think maybe one or two boxes that I'm like unsure about, and I just kind of need a little more time to think about it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, why do you think that? First of all, like, what are some of the boxes that you think it tick off?
I don't know. I'm kind of the type of person that wants some sort of guarantee, like some kind of like, maybe not a guarantee all the way, but like at least something like that I mean, I've seen some of the testimonials, and I know that you guys can do some great things for some people, but like, maybe do you have any like numbers of like what percentage of the people that actually do this program, what percentage of them like actually reach the goals that you're saying that they can reach?
Yeah, well, first of all, I understand that like how you're trying to be cautious when it comes to making decision. And I don't exactly recall the percentage, but we do have a lot of case studies. In terms of the funding, is it the case that you have full 5K investment, or is the case that more so you're a little bit uncertain about moving forward?
Yeah, I can get the money. It'll take me a little bit of like moving stuff around.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say it's not necessarily the money. It's more that like, I want to feel comfortable that if I put in the work that I think is required or that you tell me is required, that I'm going to get the result.
Mm-hmm. So with the reason why you're asking the case studies and you like more certainty, is it fair to say it's like a fear of unknown?
Um,
Please correct me if I'm wrong. Like I just want to see what your reason is.
yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a fear per se. It's more like if I'm gonna do something and put the investment into something, I want to like dot the T's and cross the I's.
Okay, I see what you mean. Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Let's just say this course or mentorship guarantee you to make 10K a month, which we discussed in the call. Would you do it?
Guarantee? Like
Yeah.
what kind of like obviously there's no th-
I
there's
mean,
no
just
guarantee if I don't do the work. Like obviously there has to be some sort of amount of work that I have to do
you're
for
right.
that number to for that guarantee to come to fruition.
Yeah, but like hypothetically, I'm just asking, like, if this course like absolutely guarantee you to get to where you want to be in terms of like financial freedom and the time freedom that you mentioned, would you do it?
Yeah.
Okay, but like you said, unless you put the work, there's no guarantee. And also in life, apart from death and taxes, there's no real guarantee, right? The only way to figure that out is for you to actually take action and see how that goes. So, um, from what we talked about today, it sounds like you've really been thinking about this for a long time and you want to hit your goal. So, what do you think you should do from here?
Um, I mean, I think I still need to think about it.
Okay. Um, is that because of like you're not sure if it's gonna go well?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Have you been to the beach before?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you must have put your fingers or toes in the water, right?
Yeah.
Before you do that, can you tell whether the water is going to be cold or hot?
Mm, I can have a pretty good idea if it's sunny out that day and
Uh-huh.
if it's hot, then the water is probably going to be kind of warm.
Okay. So, I mean, as you said, like let's just say the weather is hot, then are you saying you would assume that the water is going to be warm?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you mentioned there's certainly some of the boxes that it tick off. Like you think that this course will help you to where you want to be. So from where you're at right now, like, do you think this course is going to help or not really?
I think it would help. Yeah. I'm just
Okay.
not sure if it's worth like I'm just worried that I'm gonna throw the 5 grand in and then I'm not gonna get to that goal, even if I put in like the work.
hmm I mean, I appreciate that you're being honest. Like a lot of time, what I see in the call is like people just don't want to, share what they think. But I appreciate that you share like how you're a little bit uncertain about whether things are going to go well. Um, have you ever traveled before, like to different country?
Pause.
Hmm.
What are you stuck on? Because what's
Uh,
what's he what's he gonna say once you say, "Have you ever traveled before?"
he will
Oh,
say
no.
yeah, then he'll go back to the same reason, I think.
Why?
What I think is I should have clarified the reason at the beginning. He said this course tick off some of the boxes, but there's one or two uncertainty. I feel like I should have really tied it down before the logistic question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that would have made the objection handling much easier.
For sure. I agree. And just getting more clarity on the specifics of what is holding him back. Because like you said, he's got like one or two uncertainties. You want to become very, very clear on like what that is. Because he could actually not think that the solution is going to get him there with absolute certainty, not just based off what he's seen and stepping into the unknown, but he doesn't feel like he's confident he can follow through on the solution. Could be the work hours, could be so many different reasons we kind of didn't dive into. Whereas I would lay the groundwork first in terms of finding out very clearly what that hesitancy is. And then we can start going for different analogies and select and put in what we want to in accordance to what his actual concern is. Does it make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah. This is the like biggest thing that I'm trying to work on. Your feedback last week was similar to this. At the beginning phase, when the prospect is not really like opening up, how would you get down to the like real root cause? Um,
So there's a few different ways. There's a few different ways. Always before you go anywhere or worry
uh-huh.
about anything, always take care of logistics, which is
Okay.
money first, right? That's what you want to be prioritizing, and that's what you want to know off in the beginning. I noticed how you went from one direction to another direction to this direction, and then eventually logistics, and it felt kind of shaky. I think, let me just take a look here. Um, where you said he said he also said like he needs to move stuff around. Like he has some logistics concerns to take care of, and we didn't go any deeper into that, right? We had no idea. That could have very well been the reason as to why he doesn't want to move forward right now. Because again, like he said, I need to move some stuff around. We kind of just left it at that. And then we carried on and moved on. We didn't classify or anything like that. Like, yeah, I could get it, but I don't necessarily have it on hand.
Oh, okay. I thought
What?
because he added after that saying it's more so the uncertainty, I assume, but yeah, it would have been
No,
better if I right.
yeah, 100%. Like you want to clarify, okay, so you need to move some stuff around. Just just
Uh-huh.
to just to understand the clearer picture, like how exactly do you mean by that? And if he's
Uh,
still vague at that point, like, okay, so how much would you say that you have on hand at the moment, liquid? And then how much do you need to get? Like, what does that look like? What's the equation look like? And then if need be, we can also break things down to a payment plan, but we also know what we're working with in terms of what we can take now and what we can get later. Because it
mhm.
doesn't matter about any uncertainty or anything like that. He on the call right now, based off what you've provided to him and what you've told him in terms of how he can pay, he can't come up with, is what he's told you. So it
Mm,
doesn't matter if you handle every objection on the planet beyond that, unless we
mhm,
have that ironed out very clearly, then
mhm,
he's not going to move forward anyway because he can't, right? Or at least in his mind, he can't. For example, if the program's 5K and we still haven't explored options about how we can broke it down or how we can take what he has on hand now and then collect the remainder in a couple of days, especially in B2C, they're not going to think, oh, well, I could just put 2K down and I can do 3K in the next couple of days. He's going to think, well, I can't do it because I don't have the money. And
mm.
then he's also going to give you other reasons as to why that is. But the core root reason is that, and then reasons beyond that as well. Does it make sense?
Yep. I see the reason why I should really be um, strong in clarifying the logistic upfront.
100%.
Yeah.
Logistics,
Uh-huh.
find out what the real root cause objection is, and then handle that objection, whatever the concern is, appropriately there. Um,
Hmm.
Cream, did you say you had a question?
Yeah, so like when you are handling the logistics and you ask them, do you have a whole funding? And they say, no, I have a part of it. And you say, okay, and like besides the funding, is there anything else that is preventing you from moving forward? Would you dive into the funding first or get rid of the other concerns and get back to the funding after?
Funding first, and then isolate whatever else is out there after that. So I would say, and just do a bit of an open wallet. Okay, no worries, not a problem. Are you are you open to having an honest conversation about your finances to see if there's a way that we can do this? Like, would that be helpful to you? Yeah, for sure. Okay. So you said that you have access to some of it, and then you need to get, you know, some of it from other places. How much do you have on hand at the moment? Like, what does that look like Oh, I have like half. Okay, no worries. And like, how long would it take you to get the other funding? Oh, like a couple of days. Okay, and the other funding is like, where's that coming from? Uh, um, my parents. I'm getting a loan, whatever else it is. Um, yeah. And then I would go down to other parts of the conversation. But I'd want to iron out very clearly and make an offer to them financially of like, okay, we can do this, and then we have conversations about whatever else. You can say, okay, great. So the finances are sorted. We figured that out together. So and then you make the ask for the sale, and if they say, well, I just need some time to think about it, that means that we still have some unsolved or unresolved concern, which then we would handle it there.
Okay, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. And like, what would be your approach to, like, if they don't have the whole funding, what's the priority? So like there's, taking loan payment plans, like getting a deposit.
Yeah, so there's 5 or 6 commitments that you can get from someone. So there is a paid in full, there's a payment plan, there is credit or like a loan or like external financing, there is a deposit or a down payment, and then there's verbal commitment. These are the 5 commitments that you can get from someone in at any given point in time in a sales call. Obviously, paid in full being the highest and verbal commitment being the lowest. But this is the commitment that we want to walk from the conversation with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, yeah, makes sense.
To answer Michael's original question about how do we uncover what the root cause or the root concern is once we've handled logistics, or they tell you up front, handle logistics, and then if they still tell you they need to think about it, there's a myriad of different ways you can go about it. You can ask directly, or you can do different strategies and techniques to go about it indirectly. For example, an indirect example of like getting a root core concern is like a Jeremy Minor technique, right? Where he specifically goes to book another call, and the reason why this works so well is because they think that they're having out and they're going and they're leaving. And once you've booked the follow up call, you just say it's very simple, very simply. Now before I go, I wanted to ask you just so I prepare for our meeting accordingly. I get you all the information you need. What was it that you wanted to run over in your mind just to see if I can get some resources to be helpful? And they say, well, I had some hesitancy about the price, or I had some hesitancy about um, I had some hesitancy thinking that whether or not I can actually do this in the first place. I don't know if I have the time, or I'm not quite sure if I'm actually going to get the result, or whatever else it is that comes out there. And then we squeeze out what the actual root cause and concern is, right? Another alternative version, you can ask them directly, which might be, I want to think about it. Okay, no, not a problem. So when you do go think about it, like what is it you may be wanting to run over in your mind, just to see if I can help, right? Super simple, right? Now, there are some certain prospects that will be more open towards directly being asked, and there's some prospects that will be most likely more open to being indirectly asked. And the reason for that is just the human psychology behind objections is a concern, and they don't want to offend you. So they don't want to reject you. They don't want to say no. So again, think about it as a polite way of saying that because they have an underrooted question beyond it or behind it, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Makes sense.
So, or, what's behind that? When you say you're this, like what's behind that, right? Whatever else it is. And you can kind of just ask it more directly. There's a few different ways of asking that. Jason.
Yeah, I was wondering about those little story we used to make a point, like, did you touch the water? Can you know the temperature? Um, how often do we use them? Because when I was listening, I was like, okay, the travel and the water, it's maybe too much in a short time. And how can we use that optimally, let's say?
So, like your question is like, when and how frequently would you use analogies,
Yeah.
metaphors? So it's not it's less of a more or how much you would use it. It's more of an appropriate use case, if that makes sense. So my general philosophy on objections and the general understanding I have of them is that it is a concern that the prospect doesn't want to tell you about because they don't want to offend you. Long story short, that's basically what they're doing. No one has to think about anything. No one has to think about a decision, digest it, mull it over. Everybody has the information required that they need there on the call if things have been done appropriately. So really, all they're doing is just withholding their concern at the end of the day. And so when it comes to objection handling, our job is to find out and decipher what the real concern is and what they're actually worried about the most, right? There's usually just one thing, whether it be uncertainty in whether or not they can get the result, whether or not they can do the things required to get the result, whether or not they haven't seen enough testimonials, whatever else it is, there's always an underlying reason or root concern. And so what we need to do is we need to craft analogies or metaphors or reframes is a better way to think about it for them to have a different perspective and help them overcome that way of thinking if it's a decision-making process or whatever objection that that they're giving you, right?
So usually you try to have the root cause before using an analogy.
Yeah, think of it this way. Like if you're trying to put a circular shaped ball through a square shaped hole, it's not going to fit no matter how much you force it, right? Or a star shaped hole, it's not going to fit, right? And that's the same thing with objection handling. If I talk about walking around a desert island and exploring uncharted mountains and peaks and summits, whereas like someone's just been burned before, the analogy or the metaphor is not going to correspond to what their actual objection or concern is. So we're going to end up walking in circles and they're just going to continuously say, I just want to think about it. I just want to think about it. I just want to think about it because we're not actually addressing the root core concern of what is holding them back. But the reason they withhold that information again is just purely because they don't want to offend you and they don't want to let their cards down in a way.
Thanks.
Cool. There was questions that I remembered. So, Abdul?
Yeah. With the analogy, I was in a role play with Hamza, and he said that best, like, I think it's best to do the analogy like only if they're unsure about the reframe you do in regards to handling the fear. If they're still in the middle, like they don't fully agree, then would you use that analogy to like fully get them to be on your side with like with how you share the perspective?
Well, they're always going to be in the middle, right? Because they're uncertain.
Yeah. I mean, like, no, not in the middle. Sorry. Let's say that you're trying to do a reframe, right? Like them not fully get like when you're trying to do the reframe, and then for you to handle the objection, and then like that they don't fully get it, right? Like then would you use the analogy to
If you're
make it
doing
more
the,
sense?
if you're doing the analogy and they don't fully get it, do you
So the
stop
reframe, I mean reframe. You're not like you first like share a reframe, then
Yeah.
you share the analogy, right?
If
But like
if they don't fully get it, you're delivering the analogy wrong, or it's not a good analogy, so you need to use a different one.
yeah,
If
okay,
if you mean by they don't quite get it and they just say, "Oh yeah, it sounds good, but I need to think about it," it's either because you've used the wrong reframe analogy or metaphor and
okay,
misappropriately prescribed like what the actual objection is or diagnose what the actual concern is, or you just need to keep hacking at it with analogies and reframes if you have got the concern correct, if that makes sense.
okay. All right, yeah, makes sense. Cause I remember I did a reframe that analogy. It worked well, but Hamza said it was a bit too long. So
Well,
should I
there you
just
go.
cut the analogy out of the way?
Yeah, 100%. Cut it down. So
Yeah.
the reason you get that response is because it's too long. It needs to be short, it needs to be succinct, it needs to be clear. You need to be
Yes.
confident when delivering it. There's a lot of things that go into analogies and reframes in general, but
Cool.
those would be the main things.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, that's good.
Matt?
Michael, is your question about that bit?
My one is about the prospect response. You can go first.
I was just I was wondering about those 5 commitments. Like, is there kind of like a waterfall effect where you like try to get them to pay in full, and then if they don't, then you kind of go to the partial payment, and then if they can't, then you go to like, is it sort of structured like that?
Yeah, sequentially. Yeah. So obviously the highest being PIF, payment in full, payment plan, uh, financing, deposit,
Deposit, verbal,
verbal
yeah.
commitment. So yeah, you would start from the top and then obviously verbal commitments the bottom of like intent or commitment.
Is there like, I haven't seen that in like practice. Like I haven't seen someone sort of, I guess that would be kind of an objection handle.
In a
Like you're
way,
kind of
so
handling that objection of I
think
don't have
think
the full payment right now. Okay,
think
well, we can do this then.
think of it this way, just to paint it out for you more visually. So we have payment in full. So this is when we go through, we say not a problem. Funding aside, do you still feel like this is what you are looking for, or do you still feel like this is something you can do? Yes, I do. Why? Great. So what are some ways we can find the funding? Well, blah blah blah. I find the funding, paid in full. If I don't have a paid in full, then we need to have a discussion about, again, what are the different steps we can take to afford a payment plan, or like what logistics we can go down to be able to do that. Then from there, if we can't do either of those options, then we lead them down the financing route, whether financing programs or platforms you have with the company you work with. So external financing providers, credit, leveraging those forms of getting other people's money. And then beyond that, we're looking for a deposit. And a deposit can occur in any stage of the cycle, whether or not you're handling fear or whatever else it is. And then there's verbal commitment beneath that as well, as like a very last option that you can get on the call, which a verbal commitment is very, very weak, but it's still a form of commitment.
Okay. I think that answers it. Thanks.
Cool. No worries.
I
All
have a
good?
question on that quick. Sorry.
Sure.
Um, so you know how before the last bit, the verbal commitment. What about credit, like taking the credit card information without processing the payment?
Yes. Yep. That actually is a form of, it's a form of commitment that I didn't think of. So, yeah, taking their credit card information is one thing, but also keep in mind in some parts of the world that's actually illegal these days.
Oh,
So,
in
just want
Australia.
to be you want to be careful with that, because I actually think that is illegal these days. I think it's been illegal for a long time, but just it's not really that relevant in high ticket sales space. But yes, that is another form of commitment you can do.
Okay. All right. Cool. Makes sense.
Sorry, I have one more question, but it popped
Sure.
back into my head.
Yeah.
So all of these steps, like obviously up until verbal commitment, are things that you're going to do on the spot with the person. The money is going to get transferred to the account, paid in full, partial payment, finance, like all those, the four where money is exchanging hands, that's happening on the spot.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And that doesn't need like, it's surprising that that's not regulated in some way.
No, it's actually fine to no, it's totally fine to go through that. I think the only thing that would be like dicey in terms of like general compliance, I think would be the things to stay away from in our industry primarily is like you can absolutely get X, Y, and Z outcome if you're selling something financial. Like, oh yeah, you can absolutely get to 10K a month, or you can absolutely do this, or whatever else, or you can do it in this time frame, or whatever else, right? That's usually not very compliant, as well as, you know, certain ways that you position leveraging credit and things like that, and finance partners, whatever else. Like, there's certain things that are do's and don'ts of, the general best practices. I'm not the best person to ask for that, but there are general best practices just to keep things above board, if that makes sense. Like,
Okay.
oh yeah, just get this credit card and put the $10,000 program on it. It's 0% interest or it's like it's 25% interest, whatever. Like it's kind of leaning towards the part of like financial advice, which you want to steer clear from. So like you just have to be careful with how you recommend solutions.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's that financial advice is very strictly, especially in the States and Canada. I know it's like they're really strict about it. Like you can lose, like I had my insurance license and mutual fund license in Canada, and if you, like you said, promise something or you say like, oh, I can get you this percentage, like you cannot do that.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
illegal. Yeah.
Exactly. So just use general common sense and just don't promise or guarantee any outcomes. That's pretty much like the main thing. Mike, we had a question.
Yeah. So when you ask what's the real reason behind it, let's say if the prospect says, I've been burned before, that's
Mm-hmm.
good because burn before is easy to understand. I can use car analogy.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the prospect says, I'm not sure if I'm able to do that? That's to me sounds like fear of failure. Would you assume or would you actually clarify the word by
Always
asking another?
clarify. Always clarify. General best practice is if you don't understand what they mean at face value or it could be interpreted in different ways, then
Uh-huh.
clarify every single
Okay.
time. That's always the general rule of thumb.
By just saying, okay, so are you saying, perhaps
Don't
it's
don't
fear?
say I don't say are you saying because that's still suggestive and assumptive.
Uh-huh.
Say when you say that you can't do that, how exactly do you mean? Or what do you mean by
Okay.
that? Because again, that means so many different things to different people. I wouldn't say that out loud for that particular probe and clarify, but in that instance, yeah, ask them what they genuinely mean by that.
Yeah, it's exactly like doing the same thing as what you do in the discovery, like clarifying that same clarifying question.
Correct. So, for
Okay.
example, um, like I was working with a coach I'm working with at the moment yesterday, and they asked me because in the onboarding form that I did some backlog with data, which some of you guys filled out. So thanks for doing that. About like why you joined the RSA. Like pretty much like 90% of the forms said the reason they bought was because I was authentic, right, in my content, right? But it's hard to replicate authentic because I don't really know what that means tangibly. So it's like, what, like, was it something that I specifically said, or what, like, what is it? I don't really understand what made someone buy from me based off being authentic necessarily because it's so broad, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Makes sense.
Other bits of feedback I had for you were when someone says whatever objection, just always just diffuse right away. So you just said, okay, right? Just not a problem, no worries, not an issue, no worries. Like just keep it like very much diffuse and dilute it down. No worries, not a problem, not an issue, right? Um, and then immediately follow them up with, do you feel like based off what you're seeing, can't remember. Did you ask, do you feel like this is what you're looking for? Or you said something different, I can't remember.
I said, for the first objection, I said, is this what you were looking for?
I
Like the
just
course.
changed it a little bit. and just go, so that's not a problem. No worries. Funding aside, do you still feel like this is the answer for you? Or do you
Okay.
still feel like this is something that you can do to get to where you want to go in terms of like specificity of your language? I'll just tweak that a little bit. What else here? Just little things like I wouldn't use the word. Did you say the word fear?
I did. I tried to clarify the actual objection. So I did say that.
Little small thing. I generally would avoid using the word fear, especially when they are fearful, because who likes to admit that they're scared or fearful? Literally nobody on planet Earth, right? Ever would admit that they're scared, right? Besides women, maybe, right? But I know men specifically, they're not going to say, I'm scared or I'm fearful. They're going to have their ego taken the door and they're going to say, well, I didn't say that. I wouldn't say that. Like they're going to perhaps get a little bit more defensive. So more neutral words are like uncertainty or unsure, whatever else like that's more middle ground, more neutral. That's probably going to help you rather than like fear. Most likely you get a bit of pushback, I've found in my personal experience. What was your thought process behind saying, would you do it if it guaranteed a result?
I was gonna say like there's no guarantee in life apart from death in Texas, but Matt actually said like something like he kind of knew what I was gonna say, and he said like uh he like ran away from that like framing. I don't exactly remember what he said, but yeah, that was my thought process.
So I guess a broad other suggestion I could give as feedback is don't ask questions that give the prospect a binary that is not going to put you in a good position, if that makes sense. So don't ask questions that the prospect can give you a bad answer. You want to ask questions that force the answer that you want. For example, that would make sense, right? Because we all make decisions based on our current perspective. You can't disagree with that because that's factual. You know what I mean? So I'm cornering them into a box. And then I'm also cornering them with the question beyond that being based it on where you're at in regards to solving X, Y, and Z problem. Where do you feel like you'd honestly rate yourself from 1 to 10 in terms of progression, in terms of like getting the absolute perfect result in regards to the problem you're experiencing? Be honest. Don't put yourself as a 7, right? Because most people do that, or a 6. Where would you honestly put yourself in regards to progression towards solving that problem? I'm prefacing with the context I'm giving that question. I'm forcing the answer that I want. If that makes sense. I'm being very careful with the words I say and the question that I ask to not get bad answers. Abdul.
Right. Connor, I was curious, like when you say like, and don't say a 7 because everyone says 7. Like, what do you do that for? Just curious.
Because 7's a shit answer, right? Like 7 doesn't really get me anywhere, does it? Because 7's like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's not that terrible. Whereas in reality, if they're there with you at the end of that call and you're speaking to the right person, they should be a 5 out of 10, right? They should be a 4 out of 10, right? So I'm asking that question and I'm prefacing with that context so they don't give me, or I'm a 7 or am I 8, like, because they're clearly not. But a lot of people will say that just to make themselves feel better. And so the question that I have that immediately follows up after that as well, just for context, is okay, well, do you want the decision-making process that's allowed you to get to a 5 out of 10 to dictate your results moving forward? Because again, that question I'm asking is leading towards a binary answer that I want to get out of the person to paint them in a box. Does that make sense?
Sweet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, put it in the box. Like you're basically taking away what they're gonna say next. Obvious answer. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
objection.
like setup. Yeah.
You go.
Cool.
No, I was just saying it's a good setup rather than just asking directly. good framing, like context.
100%. All objection is just positive gaslighting. That's really all that is, right? Yes, it's about finding the root concern, but it's really, 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 really trying to force an outcome. Because again, we can't force someone to say yes, but we can make it really difficult to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the intention behind it and what we're trying to do there. And I think overall, just one point of feedback, I think just being a bit smoother. And I think being a bit smoother and more confident, more direct is going to come from confidence in process. I think that's a really, really big thing for you. So
Yeah.
focus on your structure and where you go by default, no matter what's happening, and understand where you're going. And then we can work on everything else. But the structure of handling logistics and getting confident in that, and then your analogies and your reframes and your metaphors and whatever else you'd use, practice those over and over and over again so the delivery of them becomes a lot more certain. Because again, all those things are important, but it's also about how you say something rather than just what you say as well on top of that, especially in objection handling. Because it's a transmutation, if that's the right word, it's transference of certainty. So it's also not just about what you're saying and how you're addressing the problem. It's also how you're addressing it and how you're actually expressing it and how you're saying it.
Yeah, I'll work on the structure first and then I'll move on to the reframe. But I got a lot of good takeaways today. So I'll work on those ones. Thanks for your feedback.
Awesome. Thanks for stepping forward.